Okay, now we come to another quite important sutta, 137, Salayatanavibhanga Sutta, the exposition of the sixfold base. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. There he addressed the monks as, "Monks, Venerable Sir," they replied, the Blessed One said this, "Monks, I shall teach you an exposition of the sixfold base. Listen and attend closely to what I shall say." "Yes, Venerable Sir," the monks replied. The Blessed One said, "The six internal bases should be understood. The six external bases should be understood. The six classes of consciousness should be understood. The six classes of contact should be understood. The 18 kinds of mental exploration should be understood. The 36 positions of beings should be understood. Therein, by depending on this, abandon that. There are 3 foundations of mindfulness that the Noble One cultivates, cultivating which the Noble One is a teacher fit to instruct a group. Among the teachers of training, it is he that is called the incomparable leader of persons to be tamed. This is the summary of the exposition of the sixfold base. The 6 internal bases should be understood. These 6 internal bases can also, you can also say, the 6 sense bases. So it was said, and with reference to what was this said, there are the eye base, ear base, nose base, tongue base, body base, mind base. So it was with reference to this that it was said the 6 internal bases should be understood. Stop here for a moment. These 6 internal sense bases are the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body and mind. The 6 external bases should be understood, so it was said. And with reference to what was this said, there are the form base, the sound base, the odor base, the flavor base, the tangible base, and the mind object base. So it was with reference to this that it was said the 6 external bases should be understood. Stop here for a moment. These 6 external bases can also said to be the 6 external sense objects. That means objects that impinge on the 6 sense organs. Here form impinges on the eye, sound impinges on the ear, odor impinges on the nose, flavor impinges on the tongue, tangible or touch impinges on the body, and mind object or thoughts impinge on the mind. The 6 classes of consciousness should be understood, so it was said. And with reference to what was this said, there are eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. So it was reference to this that it was said the 6 classes of consciousness should be understood. These 6 consciousness, eye consciousness can also be said to be the seeing consciousness. Ear consciousness can also be said to be the hearing consciousness. Nose consciousness can be said to be the smelling consciousness. And the tongue consciousness can be said to be the tasting consciousness. Body consciousness can be said to be the touch consciousness or tactile consciousness or tangible consciousness. The mind consciousness can be said to be the thinking consciousness. The 6 classes of contact should be understood, so it was said. And with reference to what was this said, there are eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, and mind contact. So it was with reference to this that it was said the 6 classes of contact should be understood. This contact meaning the external sense bases contact the internal sense base. The 18 kinds of mental exploration should be understood. This mental exploration, the Pali word is mano pavichara. Vichara is sustained thought. So mental thought, here it says mental exploration. So it was said. And with reference to what was this said, on seeing a form with the eye, one explores a form productive of joy. One explores a form productive of grief. One explores a form productive of equanimity. Similarly, on hearing a sound, smelling an odor, tasting a flavor, touching a tangible, cognizing a mind object, one explores these external sense objects productive of joy or productive of grief or productive of equanimity. Thus there are 6 kinds of exploration with joy, 6 kinds of exploration with grief, and 6 kinds of exploration with equanimity. So it was with reference to this that it was said the 18 kinds of mental exploration should be understood. The 36 positions of being should be understood. Stop here for a moment. These positions, the Pali word is pada, positions. So it was said, and with reference to what was this said, there are 6 kinds of joy based on the household life, and 6 kinds of joy based on renunciation. There are 6 kinds of grief based on the household life, and 6 kinds of grief based on renunciation. There are 6 kinds of equanimity based on the household life, and 6 kinds of equanimity based on renunciation. Herein, what are the 6 kinds of joy based on the household life? When one regards as an acquisition the acquisition of forms, cognizable by the eye, that are wished for, desired, agreeable, gratifying, and associated with worldliness, or when one recalls what was formerly acquired, that had passed, ceased, and changed, joy arises. Such joy as this is called joy based on the household life. Stop here for a moment. So this joy in regard to forms, for example, a young man, he acquires a beautiful girlfriend. So the beautiful form of that girlfriend gives him that joy. This is worldly joy. Similarly, when one regards as an acquisition, the acquisition of sounds, the acquisition of odors, acquisition of flavors, acquisition of tangibles, acquisition of mind objects that are wished for, desired, agreeable, gratifying, and associated with worldliness, or when one recalls what was formerly acquired, that has passed, ceased, and changed, joy arises. Such joy as this is called joy based on the household life. These are the 6 kinds of joy based on the household life. Herein, what are the 6 kinds of joy based on renunciation? When by knowing the impermanence, change, fading away, and cessation of forms, one sees as it actually is with proper wisdom, that forms, both formerly and now, are all impermanent, suffering, and subject to change, joy arises. Such joy as this is called joy based on renunciation. Similarly, when by knowing the impermanence, change, fading away, and cessation of sounds, of odors, of flavors, of tangibles, of mind objects, one sees it as it actually is with proper wisdom, that external sense objects, both formerly and now, are all impermanent, suffering, and subject to change, joy arises. Such joy as this is called joy based on renunciation. These are the 6 kinds of joy based on renunciation. Stop here for a moment. So here, from the first one, the 6 kinds of joy based on the household life are the joy you get because of the 6 sense objects. You see beautiful form, you hear beautiful sounds, smells, taste, touch, and thoughts. These are also called the 6 baits of Mara. Mara is trying to fish and catch us. So gives us beautiful forms to see, beautiful sounds to hear, etc. So if you enjoy these worldly joys, then you might be hooked by Mara. But renunciant, he understands the Dhamma. So when he understands that these 6 sense, external sense objects, he sees clearly that they are impermanent, subject to change and fading away and cessation, then because he understands that he can see clearly that these things are all impermanent and not worth clinging to, so he has that joy, the joy of Dhamma. Herein, what are the 6 kinds of grief based on the household life? When one regards as a non-acquisition, the non-acquisition of forms, cognizable by the eye, that are wished for, desired, agreeable, gratifying, and associated with worldliness, or when one recalls what was formerly not acquired, that has passed, ceased, and changed, grief arises. Such grief as this is called grief based on the household life. Similarly, when one regards as a non-acquisition, the non-acquisition of sounds, odors, tastes, or flavors, tangibles, mind objects that are wished for, desired, agreeable, gratifying, associated with worldliness. Or when one recalls what was formerly not acquired that has passed, ceased and changed, grief arises. Such grief as this is called grief based on the household life. These are the 6 kinds of grief based on the household life. I'll stop here for a moment. Here, when you cannot get what you want, for example, a young man, he wants a beautiful girl to be his girlfriend, but the girl is not interested in him. So because he cannot get it, so he grieves. Or somebody, one recalls what was formerly not acquired. For example, somebody, the son or the daughter passed away, and then when you think of what you lost, the form that you lost, grief arises. This is called grief based on the household life. Similarly for the other sense objects. Herein, what are the 6 kinds of grief based on renunciation? When by knowing the impermanence, change, fading away and cessation of forms, one sees as it actually is with proper wisdom that forms, both formerly and now, are all impermanent, suffering and subject to change. One generates a longing for the supreme liberation thus: when shall I enter upon and abide in that base that the noble ones now enter upon and abide in? In one who generates thus a longing for the supreme liberation, grief arises with that longing as condition. Such grief as this is called grief based on renunciation. Similarly, when by knowing the impermanence, change, fading away and cessation of sounds, of odors, of flavors, of tangibles, of mind objects, one sees as it actually is with proper wisdom that all these external sense objects, both formerly and now, are impermanent, suffering and subject to change. One generates a longing for the supreme liberation thus: when shall I enter upon and abide in that base that the noble ones now enter upon and abide in? In one who thus generates a longing for the supreme liberation, grief arises with that longing as condition. Such grief as this is called grief based on renunciation. These are the 6 kinds of grief based on renunciation. Stop here for a moment. So here, this renunciant, he understands that all these external sense objects are impermanent and a source of suffering, forms or body, then sounds, smells, taste, touch and thoughts. And because of seeing impermanence, then he wants to practice the holy path. And when he practices the holy path, he's longing for liberation, to be liberated from suffering. So you see here, we come into the holy path, we come and practice the holy path when we grieve. So suffering, grief is the best teacher in the world. If we don't have suffering, nobody wants to practice the holy path. Unless you're somebody with what we call Shin Kan, San Kan, this person with very good karma from previous life. If you already practice the holy path in a previous life, then even from very young, you want to practice the holy path. Otherwise, for most people, you only want to come into the holy path after you suffer, after you see suffering. So suffering actually is the best teacher in the world. For some people, the suffering they see when they are young, that is the best. When you see suffering when you are young, then you will want to practice the holy path when you are young. But unfortunately, a lot of people only see suffering when they are old, after enjoying all the worldly things. Then when their body is breaking up already, the health is no good, or they lost a lot of money, or they lost some relative and all that, then only they want to practice the holy life. But in old age, when you come to practice the holy life, it's very difficult to practice. You don't have the capacity, the blessing to support your practice. So it's better that we see dukkha when we are young. Even the worldly sense also you can see. Some people, when they come from a poor family, because they come from a poor family when they are young, they suffer. So because they suffer when they are young, they benefit from that. They become very serious people in later life, become able to stand on their own 2 feet. Whereas nowadays you see some young people born into very wealthy homes, and they are spoiled. They don't see suffering at all. Such kids, that day somebody said is what strawberry kid or something. Somebody said these people who just because they are never they are not used to suffering. They cannot stand stress. They cannot stand heavy workload and all these things. So they just not made for the world. The world is a cruel place. So it's good to see suffering. The earlier we see suffering, the better. Herein, what are the 6 kinds of equanimity based on the household life? On seeing a form with the eye, equanimity arises in a foolish, infatuated, ordinary person, in an untaught, ordinary person who has not conquered his limitations or conquered the results of action and who is blind to danger. Such equanimity as this does not transcend the form. That is why it is called equanimity based on the household life. Similarly, on hearing a sound with the ear, on smelling an odor with the nose, on tasting a flavor, on touching a tangible or cognizing a mind object, equanimity arises in a foolish, infatuated, ordinary person, in an untaught, ordinary person who has not conquered his limitations or conquered the results of action and who is blind to danger. Such equanimity as this does not transcend the external sense objects. That is why it is called equanimity based on the household life. These are the 6 kinds of equanimity based on the household life. I'll stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says that this worldly this equanimity or equanimity based on the household life is somebody who does not see the danger in form, sounds, smells, taste, touch and thoughts. So he's taking it coolly. He does not see that all these things will change and all these things will give him suffering. So this is equanimity based on the household life. Herein, what are the 6 kinds of equanimity based on renunciation? When by knowing the impermanence, change, fading away and cessation of forms, one sees as it actually is with proper wisdom that forms, both formerly and now, are all impermanent, suffering and subject to change. Equanimity arises. Such equanimity as this transcends the form. That is why it is called equanimity based on renunciation. When by knowing the impermanence, change, fading away and cessation of sounds, odors, flavors, tangibles and mind objects, one sees as it actually is with proper wisdom that external sense objects, both formerly and now, are all impermanent, suffering and subject to change. Equanimity arises. Such equanimity as this transcends the sense objects. That is why it is called equanimity based on renunciation. These are the 6 kinds of equanimity based on renunciation. So it was with reference to this that it was said the 36 positions of being should be understood. So here, equanimity based on renunciation means renunciant, he sees the impermanence, nature of the sense objects to change, to fade away. So he is not enticed by these sense objects. He is equanimous to beautiful forms. He is not excited by beautiful form. He is not excited by beautiful sounds, by nice smells, good taste, etc. So this is equanimity based on renunciation. Therein, by depending on this, abandon that. So it was said. And with reference to what was this said? Here, monks, by depending and relying on the 6 kinds of joy based on renunciation, abandon and surmount the 6 kinds of joy based on the household life. It is thus they are abandoned. It is thus they are surmounted. By depending and relying on the 6 kinds of grief based on renunciation, abandon and surmount the 6 kinds of grief based on the household life. It is thus they are abandoned. It is thus they are surmounted. By depending and relying on the 6 kinds of equanimity based on renunciation, abandon and surmount the 6 kinds of equanimity based on the household life. It is thus they are abandoned. It is thus they are surmounted. By depending and relying on the 6 kinds of joy based on renunciation, abandon and surmount the 6 kinds of grief based on renunciation. It is thus they are abandoned. It is thus they are surmounted. By depending and relying on the 6 kinds of equanimity based on renunciation, abandon and surmount the 6 kinds of joy based on renunciation. It is thus they are abandoned. It is thus they are surmounted. Stop here for a moment. So here, the Buddha is saying that if we can get the 6 kinds of joy based on renunciation, then we will let go of the 6 kinds of joy based on the household life. Similarly, if we can understand and get the 6 kinds of grief based on renunciation, namely the longing for liberation, then we can abandon, let go of the 6 kinds of grief based on the household life. Similarly for the equanimity. And then after you have the joy, the grief and the equanimity of renunciation, then the Buddha says, use the 6 kinds of joy based on renunciation to abandon the 6 kinds of grief based on renunciation. And after you have done that, then use the 6 kinds of equanimity based on renunciation to let go of the 6 kinds of joy based on renunciation. So the higher equanimity is higher than the joy and the grief. There is, monks, equanimity that is diversified based on diversity, and there is equanimity that is unified based on unity. And what, monks, is equanimity that is diversified based on diversity? There is equanimity regarding forms, sounds, odors, flavors and tangibles. This, monks, is equanimity that is diversified based on diversity. And what, monks, is equanimity that is unified based on unity? There is equanimity regarding the base of infinite space, the base of infinite consciousness, the base of nothingness, and the base of neither perception nor non-perception. This, monks, is equanimity that is unified based on unity. Here, monks, by depending and relying on equanimity that is unified based on unity, abandon and surmount equanimity that is diversified based on diversity. It is thus this is abandoned. It is thus this is surmounted. Monks, by depending and relying on non-identification, abandon and surmount equanimity that is unified based on unity. It is thus this is abandoned. It is thus this is surmounted. So it was with reference to this that it was said, therein by depending on this, abandon that. Now stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says there are 2 kinds of equanimity. One is equanimity that is diversified. That means equanimity towards forms, sounds, odors, flavors and tangibles, and based on worldly things. And then a higher type of equanimity is when you attain the arupas, arupa jhanas, the base of infinite space, base of infinite consciousness, etc. You can get this equanimity based on unity is higher. So when you can get it, and then you surmount, you abandon, you let go of the lower equanimity based on diversity. And then even after you can attain the equanimity from attaining the arupa jhanas, then the Buddha said, then you have to practice non-identification. That means you don't identify yourself with the arupa jhana. You don't identify the self, means you don't say I have attained, especially if you like this base of nothingness. When a person attains the base of nothingness, then he can see there is nothing, all is mind made. Then if a person can attain non-identification, cut off the self from the state, the attainment, this is how you let go, you abandon the equanimity that is unified. There are three foundations of mindfulness that the Noble One cultivates, cultivating which the Noble One is a teacher fit to instruct a group. Stop here for a moment. This Noble One, I think, refers to the Buddha. So it was said. And with reference to what was this said? Here, monks, compassionate and seeking their welfare, the teacher teaches the Dhamma to the disciples out of compassion. This is for your welfare, this is for your happiness. His disciples do not want to hear or give ear or exert their minds to understand. They err and turn aside from the teacher's dispensation. With that, the Tathagata is not satisfied and feels no satisfaction, yet he dwells unmoved, mindful and fully aware. This, monks, is called the first foundation of mindfulness that the Noble One cultivates, cultivating which the Noble One is a teacher fit to instruct a group. Stop here for a moment. So here when the Buddha says Tathagata, it refers to himself. So he is the Noble One. So he teaches his disciples, and the Buddha says in the case where all the disciples do not listen to him, he remains unmoved, mindful and fully aware. This, the mind being unmoved and mindful, sometimes in the suttas, the Buddha says he always remains thus, or he always remains such. In Chinese they call what? Ru putong. Such unmoving. This Pali word is tata. That's why the Tathagata, thus gone one. Thus gone one. So this tata is the thus. So the Buddha, whatever happens, because he has no more self, he always remains the same, thus or such, unmoved. Furthermore, monks, compassionate and seeking their welfare, the teacher teaches the Dhamma to the disciples out of compassion. This is for your welfare, this is for your happiness. Some of his disciples will not hear or give ear or exert their minds to understand. They err and turn aside from the teacher's dispensation. Some of his disciples will hear and give ear and exert their minds to understand. They do not err and turn aside from the teacher's dispensation. With that, the Tathagata is not satisfied and feels no satisfaction, and he is not dissatisfied and feels no dissatisfaction. Remaining free from both satisfaction and dissatisfaction, he dwells in equanimity, mindful and fully aware. This, monks, is called the second foundation of mindfulness that the Noble One cultivates, cultivating which the Noble One is a teacher fit to instruct the group. Furthermore, monks, compassionate and seeking their welfare, the teacher teaches the Dhamma to the disciples out of compassion. This is for your welfare, this is for your happiness. His disciples will hear and give ear and exert their minds to understand. They do not err and turn aside from the teacher's dispensation. With that, the Tathagata is satisfied and feels satisfaction, yet he dwells unmoved, mindful and fully aware. This, monks, is called the third foundation of mindfulness that the Noble One cultivates, cultivating which the Noble One is a teacher fit to instruct a group. So it was with reference to this that it was said, there are three foundations of mindfulness that the Noble One cultivates, cultivating which the Noble One is a teacher fit to instruct a group. So here the Buddha says that he is a teacher fit to instruct a group because whether the disciples listen to him, or some listen, some do not listen, or all of them listen to him, he may be satisfied or he may not be satisfied, but his mind always remains unmoved, equanimous. So, in the same way, we should be like the Buddha, unmoving or praise or blame. If we are unmoving or praise or blame, whether people praise the teacher or blame the teacher, he knows that he is doing his duty to teach the Dhamma. He remains unmoved. Such a person, he can only be unmoving if that person is not greedy for fame, not greedy for offerings. Then only he will be unmoved. Among the teachers of training, it is he that is called the incomparable leader of persons to be tamed. So it was said. And with reference to what was this said? guided by the elephant tamer monks. The elephant to be tamed goes in one direction, east, west, north or south. Guided by the horse tamer monks, the horse to be tamed goes in one direction, east, west, north or south. Guided by the ox tamer monks, the ox to be tamed goes in one direction, east, west, north or south. Monks, guided by the Tathagata, Arahant, Sammasambuddha, the person to be tamed goes in 8 directions. Possessed of material form, he sees forms. This is the first direction. Not perceiving forms internally, he sees forms externally. This is the second direction. He is resolved only upon the beautiful. This is the third direction. With the complete surmounting of perceptions of form, with the disappearance of perceptions of sensory impact, with non-attention to perceptions of diversity, aware that space is infinite, he enters upon and abides in the base of infinite space. This is the fourth direction. By completely surmounting the base of infinite space, aware that consciousness is infinite, he enters upon and abides in the base of infinite consciousness. This is the fifth direction. By completely surmounting the base of infinite consciousness, aware there is nothing, he enters upon and abides in the base of nothingness. This is the sixth direction. By completely surmounting the base of nothingness, he enters upon and abides in the base of neither perception nor non-perception. This is the seventh direction. By completely surmounting the base of neither perception nor non-perception, he enters upon and abides in the cessation of perception and feeling. This is the eighth direction. Monks, guided by the Tathagata, Arahant, Sammasambuddha, the person to be tamed goes in these 8 directions. So it was with reference to this that it was said, among the teachers of training, it is he that is called the incomparable leader of persons to be tamed. That is what the Blessed One said. The monks were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. That's the end of the sutta. So this last part, the Buddha is talking about the 8 vimokka, the 8 liberations. These 8 liberations, 4 of them are the arupas or arupa jhanas, the base of infinite space, infinite consciousness, base of nothingness, and base of neither perception nor non-perception. And then you have the cessation of perception and feeling. And then the other 3, being able to see forms, and then being able to see forms externally, then resolve on the beautiful. So these are all concerning meditation. But this, sometimes people use this, some monks, and they say that this includes the 4 jhanas, but the 4 jhanas are not mentioned here. So even an arahant, it does not need to have this 8 vimokka. If an arahant possesses 4 jhanas, 4 rupa jhanas, he doesn't need this 8 vimokka. He can still be liberated, can destroy the taints. This is mentioned in the Anguttara Nikaya. But these 8 liberations are not so important. In the Buddha's teachings, what is important is destruction of the taints or asavasa, attaining liberation, and also the 4 jhanas and the abhinyas, the higher knowledges. So this sutta, there's quite a lot of Dhamma here in this sutta. You have to slowly reread this sutta or re-listen to this Dhamma talk to understand it better. So I'll stop here for now. Anything to discuss?
For example, the younger person, you see that the something is really good, and when you become a young kid, and a couple of years or further down the road, his strength is controlled from to get to Maharashtra. Whereas the older person, when he goes to a young kid and older, he strengths that because he's seen a lot of something. Sometimes not so something like something artist. The other thing about the United States
This second one, you said 60 years is from who? Who? Where is it?
All they get from age young up to 16 years old to get married. Usually you start at 16 to get married, and then you have a family, and then you do business, you do and by age 60, most of these Christians do. They go hunting around.
If I have read this also, but if I'm not mistaken, the age is 48, not 60. 60 is a bit old already. 48, because you must remember, in India, when they renounce, they are ascetics. They have to live under the tree, live in the open generally. So if you are old, it is more difficult. Also, you said about people having experience and more experience in life. Although they may have experience, not everybody learns from their experience. So it is this person's past life karma. If the person from past life has this affinity with the holy path, with the spiritual practice, even from young, he will have this interest to walk this path. Also in the suttas, the Buddha says that there are certain wrong occasions to practice holy path. One is when there is famine. When there is famine in the country, and then you want to become a monk, a renunciant, it's difficult to get your living because families don't even have enough to eat. Why would they want to feed you? Secondly, when there is war, also not a proper occasion. Another one is when you are sick, when your health is not good, it's not a good occasion to practice the holy life. Another one mentioned by the Buddha is in old age. The Buddha says clearly, old age is not a good time to practice the holy path. So you see, the Buddha, he strove on the spiritual path. He suffered so much. He could take it because he was young. If you are old, can you strive like the Buddha did, the Bodhisattva? Not possible. So you must remember, the Buddha says in the Vinaya books, when a person renounces, he should understand that as to the four requisites, he's supposed to beg for his food. Don't assume that you are going to be invited for lunch every day by people. Secondly, you have to assume that you have to sleep under a tree. Don't assume you have a air-conditioned kuti waiting for you. The Buddha says you should expect to live under a tree. Then thirdly, if you are sick, the Buddha says you should expect to use your own urine as your medicine. If you get more than that, that's bonus. But the standard, the Buddha says, this is what you should expect. And then fourthly, what do you say about robes? I think robes, you're supposed to pick up cloth or something to sew in your robe. So nowadays, because a lot of monks are spoiled, so some people think, wearing the robe is good fun. It's not bad. You get a good life, you get good food, you get respect, everything. But not really. You're supposed to live not comfortably. I suppose a renunciant supposed to be ascetic, supposed to be really practicing hard, live alone in the wild and all these things. Of course, there are monks who live in towns and live in cities and all that. The Buddha does not encourage that. During the Buddha's days, no, they didn't have city monks. Generally, they have town monks. Monks only go into town or city when it's necessary. Generally, they live in the forest. So nowadays, people have sometimes a wrong concept of monkhood. Monkhood is not easy. If you come into monkhood in old age, it's very difficult to practice. If you really practice according to the Buddha's teaching. Okay, shall we end here?
Sa